Welcome to Help the Helpers this morning. And we are going to ask the very, very big questions today and see how focusing helps us not to answer the questions, but to experience the questions. And there's a big difference. I think that when we say to answer our big questions, it's as if there's a why and then there's an answer, as if someone says, oh, because blah, blah, blah. And that kind of answer of the why isn't the kind of answer that can really speak to these big questions. It's not about a why, but more about a what and a how and a who and a where kind of answer. So it's a big moment for me to introduce these big questions into our focusing discussions. I know, of course, the big questions are always there, and many of our reflections have been about them, but somehow to officially say, well, these are the big questions, and what does focusing give us about them? Seems like a big step to me. I think I began thinking more closely, more specifically about the relationship of focusing and the big questions when I began to really contemplate the idea that Jean tells us that genuine relating is something that is an evolutionary step that we haven't quite made yet. That we're in this process as humans of taking a step that's about real relating. And somehow that's so encouraging to me, because it says something about, well, we haven't gotten there yet as a species, but we're going in that direction. And it certainly doesn't seem that way, does it? When we look at what's happening in the world, it certainly doesn't seem like we're anywhere close to taking an evolutionary step toward life. It seems like complete chaos. But when we look closely at our own experience, we can find this evolutionary process. And that's what's very exciting to me. Jean was not willing to use any spiritual words or religious words or religious concepts, because he said that he would lose half the people, and we didn't need the language that has been so important to our development as a species, but for many people has gotten ruined. You know, language like salvation, redemption, language like oh, I don't know. I won't say the religious words that Jean doesn't use. But what Jean gives us is pointing to our own experience in the micro moments of our lives, experience that we don't even notice that we have. And Jean is asking us to look at this experience in a new way and say, you know, what are the implications of what we actually experience? And of course, we all experience different things. We're all very unique and we think differently about the different things that we experience. And yet there's something that's very much common to all of us. There's a common humanity, a common life, a common experience of being that we as a species have always had and other species has, and we take for granted. So the big questions, what are the big questions? Let's just think back for a minute. You probably asked these questions in many, 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 many ways all throughout our lives from the time we were very little. Like, why are we here? What is life? Where are we going? What's the meaning of life? And when we ask these questions, we somehow put them in a context that we understand in ordinary life, like, what is the meaning of life? And then it's as if somebody can tell us, oh, the meaning is this, the meaning is that, right? We put it in unit model terms. I remember when I was I think it was when I was in Vienna, and there was a little cafe, and they had a little stool, and they had people come and stand on the stool and about the meaning of life. And it was so interesting. All these different people talking about what they thought the meaning of life was. I think I did it too. This was many years ago, but I don't remember what I said. But when we ask those questions, we're asking into a different dimension of reality. We're not asking the ordinary questions. Where did I put my glasses or my phone, or how do I pay the bill, or something like that? Asking a different dimension. What Jane has given us in this philosophy is a way to take what we think of as supernatural and point out the naturalness of it. In Jane's philosophy and in what he's shown us about experience, there's nothing that's supernatural. All the miracles, all of the mysteries, all of the magnificence, all of the what's too horrific to think about, all of that is in the realm of the natural. And we're never going to be able to answer the why of it. But the what of it, the how of it, is right there where we're not noticing. So many of you know what I'm talking about, right? There are several mysteries that I've been contemplating since I was a child. And I just want to take the first one for this morning, and we'll see if we get to the others. The first one about what's it all about? What is that movie, What's It All About, Alfie, or something? People always quote that. What is this life? And what am I doing here? And does it have any purpose? But we desperately need a purpose. We desperately need a meaning. And when I say that, it's really all off. It's not that I, Lynn, need a meaning and it's out there. I need a purpose and it's out there. It's more that I am a meaning, I am a purpose. It's the meaning, the purpose is inherent. It's in it. It's in life. We can't separate it from life. We are meaning-making beings. Let's just take that in for a second. The meaning, the purpose, the development is all in us, in life. See if this resonates with you, what I'm going to say. For me, Jane Genlin pointing out the experience of the felt sense, the experience of that still small voice that's talked about in the Bible, the still small voice. BJ, you probably even know where in the Bible it says that. But that experience of life speaking in us, through us, that experience of the felt sense is our umbilical cord to the whole great big altogether everything. Can you get a feel of that? This little experience that I have that I might not even notice, this sensual, bodily, energetic, very quiet, mostly, experience that we can hardly get a hold of. We have to be trained to notice it. And it opens up to another step. That little experience is a microcosm, I'm saying, to the whole great big everything. It's our channel. It's our, but it's not that it's separate from us. It is us. We are in interaction with the whole great big everything. So I want to pause there just for us to see what we think about that. I want to go back to very rudimentary focusing that all of you know, I believe. And if you don't, I think you'll get it, right? That when we pay attention to this edge of where we can't think anymore in unit model terms, right? We can't logically, rationally think any further. At that edge, something comes. And this something comes, it comes through, and it opens a little to a tiny step. And that tiny step opens to another tiny step. And our whole bodies can shift and say, oh, it's like that. And what I want to offer this morning is that this is our way of experiencing the whole evolution, not only of humans, of life, of planets, of the way that, and this is actually uh, spoken about in systems theory, complexity theory, that the tiniest system is opening and self-regulating in the same way that stars and galaxies are. And our little systems go way out to those big systems. So I want to remind you about that, and I want to show you this teeny weeny clip. And it's of Jean doing a demonstration in 2013, a long time ago, that many, many, many of you have seen. How many have seen the demonstration ripped out? Raise your hands. So I want to see. Not everybody. We're putting it in the chat. And if you haven't seen it, watch this demo. But I'm bringing just a minute of it to just remind you of how a focusing process works. And this way, before you play it, Christine, I'll set the stage. This was in a demonstration where Jean was talking about the theory of psychotherapy. And um, and this woman, and I don't remember her name, she said that she wanted to volunteer because her experience was so vivid in that moment that she felt ripped out. We never heard the circumstances. It sounded like maybe a breakup or something, but something was ripped out of her and it would never be whole again. And Jean kept her right at that spot, that edge of the ripped out and never be whole again. And just was with her, joining her, accompanying her, waiting for the next little step to come. She said, I don't know what to do about it. I'll make believe that I'm okay, but I'm not okay. I'll never be okay. I wish somebody could tell me, what to do. There's nothing I can do. And Jean was just with her. Yes, it's right there. And now we're going to watch this tiny little step.
What
Okay.
could possibly do anything for here?
Right.
What it needs. Nothing you can think of fits there. It's just to say, we don't yet know anything that it needs, or that would help it, or that would make it whole. We don't know anything.
That's interesting when you say we don't know. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't. That's a new one for me.
How come? I didn't really understand how come that's new.
Because I feel recognized in the pain.
Yes.
And I don't feel crowded in it, but I also don't feel alone in it at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, I see. Okay. Yes.
Okay. That was a very tiny moment of that demo. But what did you see? What happened in that tiny little step?
I thought he introduces the we. I thought the we don't know, and then for me, I mean at least, and then so kind of join her in this question that she's having to. So it's the two of them, working through this. That's what I thought.
Yes. And Gene doesn't even realize he's doing that.
Mm.
He just says, well, we don't know because he doesn't know, she doesn't know, we don't know. And it's as if this little step is coming through Gene, through the accompaniment. And what does it mean? What, anybody, how is that a step?
Well, there was an opening and she felt connected.
Yeah.
There was an opening and she felt connected.
She didn't feel crowded and she didn't feel alone.
Yeah.
Those were her words, yeah.
Yeah, she didn't feel crowded and she didn't feel alone.
And there's something that's coming.
Mm.
It's not yet, but it is coming. There's a sort of a forward positioning that we are there together waiting, or you can sort of like holding your breath and expecting.
Mm.
We don't yet
We
know,
don't
but
yet know.
we
And
might. You know.
and Jean puts in that yet.
Mhm.
There's that tiny little expectation that's introduced.
It's like there's a possibility now.
Yes, there's a possibility now. Marcel, it looks like you have something to say there. I just saw that expression on your face.
Samuel, did you want to say something, Samuel? No, he's just absorbing.
Okay. Anybody else?
Maybe there is also something, to me, it feels like a togetherness, them two. Um, and it's not only the big we, it's like here right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates some intimacy, some way of relating
Mm-hmm.
to the inside and to with the other. Yeah. It's interesting also the way they are positioned to me. I mean, I know that's not the question you ask, but he's in his big chair. He was often sitting in a big chair like this, low. And she's in this chair that is higher, and I would feel uncomfortable in this higher chair, smaller chair. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting that you were feeling your way into her experiencing in that physical way of, is she uncomfortable in that chair, in that position? And that even that, or especially that, our way of feeling into the experience of the other is crossing this divide.
So something came to her. Something came to her, manifested inside, and a realization of something. And
Yeah.
prior to that moment, there was kind of claiming of agency towards Jean, saying, "Oh, that's interesting. You said we." So claiming a kind of, okay, that's me saying that, and then the manifestation followed.
Yes, yes, it's that something came to her. And this is one of the basic principles of focusing, right? It has to come. But what do we mean by that? That's an amazing thing. That when we pay attention, it comes. What is that? It sounds magical, right? It sounds supernatural.
Dean was resting there, and his we came from there. His language, something languaged itself through Jean
Yes.
that was there.
Yeah.
And that languaging resonated with her there.
Yes. Yes. That's beautiful, Eric. That something languaged itself in Jean. It came through Jean, and that often happens in therapy, that it will come through the therapist or it will come through the client. But that sense of a next step of life. Let's picture for a minute. Let's see how this works, if we can do this. Let's picture for a minute this woman, and we don't know her name, and her whole life since she was born has come to this moment, this critical moment of crisis, of change, of a threshold, of something being ripped out of her, and it will never be whole again. And she's right at that edge of, I can't think of anything. Jean can't think of anything. And then just being there, and then it comes. A next little step. And in this case, in focusing, the little step can be anything, a word or a gesture or an image. But in this instance, that little step is also maybe the step of humanity in this moment of evolution. Let's just picture for ourselves. Here we are, the human species, and the world seems very, very crazy, and it's plunging ahead, and it seems to some of us in dangerous ways. And we might be saying to the whole great big everything, something is ripped out of us as a species, some civilizedness, some kindness, some purpose, and it's never going to be whole again. It's our cry. And then we wait there, sort of like in some traditions would be a prayer. And the next thing that comes is, I'm not crowded and I'm not alone. There's a we. And that we, wow, there's a we. That we makes all of the difference. What is this we? Now, I'm not in this moment invested in us looking at the we necessarily, at that step, but at the idea of the little steps coming, and then how those steps come in our lives, how they come in history, how they come in science, how they come, how does everything evolve all the time? And yet there's a sameness. It's like I'm born LYNN. There's a LYNNess from the beginning. And I'm changing every moment. These are the big mysteries that we experience in focusing. So maybe take a minute and see how this lands for you. If your life has evolved, your self has evolved or developed, and is developing in this very moment, in these tiny little steps, and how that might be connected to this whole great big everything of systems within systems within systems. Finding that that tipping point where they, it all can be self-organizing and developing. Okay, let's see what you think about that now. This is your turn. Let's take this idea and see, how does it strike you? Do you see your life as evolving? Do you see yourself as evolving from when you were very young? Something about you that's the same as when you were born, but yet you're on a journey? What is this human journey?
I think that Jean said like life is forward moving always, right? That's
Yeah.
you don't call it faith, but it's that kind of flavor to it. That was his, I don't assumption or faith or understanding or belief or what. Life is constantly moving forward, right?
Yes, thank you, Sashi. Now, Sashi's saying, is that faith? Jean says life is always forward moving. That's what life is. Life wants more life, and life moves forward in these tiny little steps. Now, is that true? Maybe Liz, who sometimes gives us the other side, will say, well, that's what he says. Maybe life isn't forward moving. Maybe it's pretty arbitrary. Maybe it's chaotic. We don't know that life is forward moving. Do we have faith in that? Is it good to have faith? Jean isn't calling upon faith. Jean is a pragmatist. He's calling on experience. He's the phenomenologist. He's saying, okay, forget about faith, forget about suspended belief. What about what we experience in the moment? We experience this forward movement. Jean says every bit of human experience has a forward movement inherent in it. The most horrible experiences, this woman's self was ripped out, and yet there's some forward movement inherent in the experience. But don't take that on faith. Wait and see. Does something come? Sashi, did that respond to your?
It did. It did. That's his methodology of going there.
Right, that's right. He's going there by looking at the microcosm. It's like you could see something about the hologram from the tiny little bit of experience.
But I think it makes it more possible. You don't have to take any jumps. It
Mm,
makes it makes it concrete and tangible rather than making these. That's how I feel, yeah.
yes.
Seems like Jean's discoveries aren't really separate from, like, there's the phenomenological investigation that goes all the way back. But
Mm,
he was with Carl Rogers, whose core conditions are so engaged and present and wholly felt, WHOL. And when we feel ripped out, it's an emergency. And Roger's core conditions of, like, empathy, accurate empathy, and unconditional positive regard, and genuineness and deep listening that's a different orientation to the phenomenon. And that's magical. And Gene studied that. He contributed to Rogers, and Rogers contributed to him. And his position isn't fearful, but
Yeah,
confronted with existential discord, we we shrink to binary perception. So this is sorry, I've just been so captivated by Rogers' core conditions. I'm like, they're
right.
blowing my mind. They're blowing my
Uh-huh,
mind
uh-huh,
in graduate school.
uh-huh. Um, I I want to point out that maybe Carl Rogers was saying this is what we need: empathy, genuineness, positive regard. Jean is saying something a little different. Not here we are discovering what we need,
No, it's
but
deeper.
this is what these conditions are what we see, what we experience, like seeing the plant in the basement. That was Carl Rogers' plant, right? The onion in the basement that was growing in this weird way toward the light of the window. And Carl Rogers saw this onion, this weird onion, and said, "What? Why is it growing like that? That's weird. Maybe it's the death instinct." We used to have the death instinct in Freudian times of um, maybe the plant just didn't want to live or something. And then he saw where the plant had come from. Oh, it needs light, it needs water. We see that, we experience that. It's like right there. And that is very miraculous.
His lip talking and he's off. His voice is off, I think.
Oh, thank you, Sashi.
See, his lips are moving, but
I see. We see your lips lip. Let's come back to you when you find your unmute button. Anybody else? Just this whole idea about focusing and evolution. How have you been thinking about evolution? Does focusing show us something about the purpose of life? Or I shouldn't say the purpose of life. Does it show us something about the mystery of life?
I always tend to be more interested in the underneath. Like here we are, humans, talking about what meaning there could, like, what is that? Why is this even a concern? And so in other words, we take for granted, oh, of course we want to know the meaning of life, but I don't take it for granted. I think here we are, these funny animals who are blessed and cursed with rumination,
Yeah. Right.
constant rumination,
Mm-hmm.
constantly trying to figure it out. And
Right.
I try so hard not to be a materialist, but I always go back there. I always think, well, did some structures in the brain have evolved? And now we have this curse where we can't just live like my cat who is like, meow, hungry, or, oh, I think I'll go to the litter pan. We have these, cortical whatevers that
Ah,
can be a lot of fun. We can have fun with it if or we can be oppressed by them, or we can be oppressed by other people's cerebral cortices who think all kinds of things and get us to, need to work for a living and ruin our lives by having to do all kinds of terrible tasks to keep their capitalist economies going and to get rich and on. And I'm demonstrating on purpose what I'm talking about.
yes.
So I guess it's fun, that to do this, or it's not fun. It's an itch.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't
It,
just live. I have to like
right.
figure it out. I have to
Yes.
scratch the itch.
And you are figuring out why we're figuring out
Yeah.
everything, right? It's like we don't know why we are these beings that think about meaning. We don't know why. We know that we are, and and it's an amazing thing.
Well,
These
if you're a
questions.
materialist, then those questions get answered really easily. But then then you have to reconcile yourself to all of the simplistic, part of being a materialist. I mean, like when I say materialist, it could be Darwinian, because somehow we evolved this way. And there are reasons. If you're a scientist, you don't have to do anything else. They already wrote it in books, but we're going into another dimension because we want to. So here we are wanting to.
What is that wanting, right? I think that we can collapse into materialism, but that that evolving evolving isn't it doesn't really answer the question, why do we evolve? What is evolving? What do we mean when we evolve? What what is this evolutionary step that we think? And what can focusing show us about it? This idea that the thinking sometimes just goes around in circles, right? We torture ourselves. And you're pointing that out, Liz. But when there's a real attention, which is an evolutionary step, right? And every evolutionary step is materialized in the brain. We have the step and the brain that goes with the step, the body that goes with the step. That we have this evolutionary step of sensing where we are in our evolution and what the next tiny step is. Isn't that amazing? I mean, that
Seems
that a river might be able to sense its next step, you know, that idea of sensing a next step that is going to bring you alive more. It's quite a phenomenon that we get to see in these tiny little moments.
When you sort of drew out Liz, and Liz, you were kind of embodying and playing with something which is staying in the question rather than seeking the answer. That's a verge. And I was somehow trying to talk about it last week as treading water there. And it's an interesting development in the conversation that Lynn, you drew out Liz, and Liz, her position is the question.
Yeah.
As I understood, Liz, as I understood what you're saying.
Yeah. The big question of why do we think? Why do we?
But not having an answer.
Right.
So there's action, there's behavior, but it's not an answer.
Right. Well, I
And
think the answer Jean gives is not a real answer, that life wants more life. Life, the nature of life is that it evolves. The nature of life is that it moves forward. But let me ask you, because we're going to go into breakout rooms in a few minutes, and I want to ask you if this meets your experience when you think back at your development, at your evolution.
Can
We
you
could
hear
say
me now?
learning. Yes.
Yes.
Now we
Okay.
can.
I like to summarize my experience of what I've heard since this morning. There was this interesting phrase a few moments after you play that video, which comes to me that I have to cross over into myself. So there's a kind of a step to go into myself. And then from what you said about the felt sense, the phrase that comes to mind is the pulse of life. And then I link that to when you say our own evolution, my felt sense of humanity has strongly developed over the last 2 years, which I wasn't like that 10 years ago. And also my felt sense of beauty is very enhanced. And I wasn't like that 10, 15 years ago, or even 5 years ago. So but the phrase that come to me that is fresh is to cross over into myself, which is a bit like be on your side or be on the side of life, being engaged with the pulse of life. The word pulse seems to come in, and the word rush. There is a rushing in aliveness, not a panicky rush, but a certain juiciness, a certain urgency, a pulse. Yeah, pulse is the right word. Like
Oh.
the impulse to live
The impulse
and to
to
die.
live.
Actually, when the time is right, I have a sense I'm willing to die because it has been a wonderful life. Uh, so anyway, that's all I'm sharing today.
Thank you, Lip. That impulse to live, that crossing over into yourself to find the life, what you experience of the life in you, and to notice how you've developed.
Yes, and that's where our languaging, human languaging, those three words cross over into myself. It's a new phrase for me. that comes soon after you play that video.
Right. And notice how language is an evolutionary step, right? That brings this whole great big everything in a tiny word to handle for a whole great big experience.
Priyanka
LYNN?
had a really wonderful smile when Lip was talking. It was spectacular smile that Priyanka.
It's
Oh, I
because
wish
I have the
I
word,
can see your smile now.
Ah,
yeah, because I have the word crossover tattooed on my arm, and
oh,
it's exactly
wow.
crossover into yourself in my language, Tandipo. And that's why I was smiling, because I had this insight many years ago that if I don't go into myself, I can't cross over into life, because going out was going away from life. That's why I was smiling. But I also wanted to add that for me, the difference between us and animals is that we have something called, in my language, we call it vivek, which is a kind of a ability. What we do in focusing is to think about life. I think animals can't do that in the way we can. And that's a huge responsibility. And focusing allows me to slow down and really take that responsibility seriously. My responsibility that I have the ability to think about life and the consequences of my actions. Animals work more with instinct. And what makes me sad is that so many people, or many people, even I, often don't take that responsibility seriously, and I do things that I regret. um, yeah, I'm wondering how I can take it more seriously and more in my life and move towards life and into myself, as Lip said.
Thank you for that. I think Marvin wants to come in, but I just appreciate your word Vivek, uh, because there was a philosopher Viveki, John Viveki. That's quite a nice surname. But anyway, Marvin is going to come in. So that crossover is beautiful.
Yes, I want to say, Priyanka, also that when you say to take it seriously, to take responsibility, there's a kind of will or choice. But then there's something that's beyond that that wants to develop, even when our thinking is we're not we're not taking it seriously, or we're not um, being responsible. Something that's in us that wants this development, even when we, in our thoughts, say, oh, the hell with it. I'm just going to have a good time, or I'm just going
Yes.
to blank out, or I'm going to, something,
I
something
like to say
still.
that's the play of grace. The word grace has a very preciousness to me. The play of grace plus the seriousness of human endeavor.
Yeah.
And Jean is saying in the focusing, I believe, grace is not something extra. It's something inherent in life. It's not supernatural. It's not, it's right there in us, this grace that the organism wants to develop, that life wants to develop. Somebody else, Marvin, yes.
Thank you, Lynn. Um, from that phrase, life wants more of life. Uh, it seems that Jean is pointing to something.
Mm,
It's not about the notion, because the notion would say, "Am I not enough?" Life
that's
would say, I don't suffice. I need more of myself." It's a bit strange if we consider the notion, the understanding of it, but the phenomenon of it, the manifestation, the existence of life, is pointing towards that ex-
Yeah.
experience of existence of life, not as a notion, but as a, I don't know, dot, dot, dot. I mean, I don't want to say anything more.
yes, yes. The dot, dot, dot. that has this whole thing in it. Thank you, Marvin. Abby, you've just come back from a journey about experiencing other cultures and other ways of experiencing life. And I wondered what what does what does that do? How do you see this developmental thrust that we have as beings? What's it developing in you?
Yeah, I just came back from Taiwan, from learning about their indigenous cultures, of their connection to like the unseen realm of the ancestors and the elemental and nature spirits. And like, I think what I sense in me is like wanting to find a crossing between modernity into that world where like the unseen is felt and interacted with as a living experience in a field, and then feeling like that tethering into the larger forces that is inherently magical and already present, but like in our modern day world we're not placing our attention, nor do we have a relationship with, especially in places like the US and Australia, that's, you know, immigrant nations that doesn't have long lineage of histories. So, but I think it's a really beautiful reminder to know that like what I recognize there is there are these primordial knowings that existed inside me that once it's experienced, there's a deep recognition and healing that happens once these linkages to these larger webs are made. So like what my system to moment way is orienting towards those forms of aliveness. Like it knows, like a deep inside knows, but it's just searching for the pathway to it in existing cultures that hasn't had those ties broken. So I think it's a great reminder to come back to that, because the mystery is already there, but it's like modern life has truncated it enough that we've lost it. And those cultures, people are way more embodied and felt. So a lot of what you're saying really maps to that. We're coming back to that experiencing, but then that experiencing knows there's something more, like beyond just us social human.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Abby. You know, it's the felt sense can be very, very local. The felt sense of where I left my glasses or something. And the felt sense can be very broad. The felt sense of my ancestors, of my culture, of the world, of the zeitgeist, right? And it's that connection. If we think of the felt sense as the umbilical cord of the individual human to the whole big thing, the bloodstream or something, then you're picking up on a different aspect of that felt sense. Okay, I think this is time for our breakout rooms, and we will come back at 9:30, 9:35. Um, before we go into our breakout rooms, I'm going to be a guest in Dana and Baruch, who teach about the field of prayer. I'm going to be a guest in their class, so I have to leave a tiny bit early. But I'll greet you when you come back from your breakout rooms, but I'm going to have to leave a tiny bit early before the poem. But we have a wonderful poem today to end our session with today. Okay, have good breakout rooms. Welcome back. Hello, hello. How was your breakout room? What did that life hold for you? It's always a difficult transition to go from one universe to another, right? From this breakout room universe to the whole group universe.
My felt sense of our breakout group was that it was very thoughtful and will continue the conversation. It'll go beyond this meeting.
Yes. A big conversation, right?
I'd like to add that the universal and whole many cultures connection that we have in Forge and we have here today is really a balancing force to what trauma is doing. That it basically breaks us apart within and also socially and on many levels. So I feel that it's a really a movement to heal trauma in many levels.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, and Orna, you're in a position there running to bomb shelters to really experience very personally that connection of the microcosm and the macrocosm of the trauma that breaks us apart and this inherent healing that seems to be in life.
Right. And also, I just came back from work, and there was so many different stories that of people that are in trouble, psychological and other traumas. And along the way, I was thinking, wow, I'm going out of this room full of drama, real drama, into this philosophical and universal connections. And it felt like really huge shift.
Yes, a huge shift. Right. And sometimes that can be so refreshing to sort of go uh, from one system to a bigger system to a big system and then back to the tiny little system of your own body, right? And how it goes out. Uh, and we have the ability to do that, to enter into the world in these many different spheres.
Right. I think it's about hope and healing. That's my sense of it now, my felt sense.
Yes, hope and healing. Okay, I think we have time for one more comment and then we'll have our poem.
There's the mystery of those breakout room, right? When we go and we don't know who are we gonna be with. And here I was with somebody who has some roots in was French, somebody. So that's interesting. How did that happen? You know, that was
Yes, yes, yes,
fun.
yes. There's this, there's these,
More present here.
these links between what we call synchronicity, or these things that seem meant to be, and our own little experience and what makes that link.
Just a short phrase. It has two forms. One is a question. What do you know by yourself? That's the question form, and the other part is that we know by ourselves.
What do we know ourselves, right? But then that self is a great, great big thing, right? That's landing in us, what we know by ourselves. Is that right, Marvin? That
Yes,
we
thanks.
know this. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So let's have our poem. I'm going to have to leave you to be a guest in Dana and Baruch's class.
Beautiful.
And I'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you, Lynn. Wonderful today. And the
Okay. And we have our poem.
poem chosen by Dorothy, who will be back soon. And Susan and I chose a few verses from this poem that we so often bring at Helpful Helpers. Song of the Open Road by Walt Whitman. And just a few verses. Oh, Song to Myself. Yes. The 1892 version by Walt Whitman. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume, you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me, as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. My tongue, every atom of my blood, formed from this soil, this air. Born here of parents, born here from parents the same, and their parents the same. Dot, dot, dot. The play of shine and shade on the trees as the supple boughs wag that the branches are waving. The delight alone, or in the rush of the streets, or along the fields and the hillsides. Dot, dot, dot. Stop this day and night with me, and you shall possess the origin of all poems. You shall possess the good of the earth and sun. There are millions of suns left. You shall no longer take things at second or first hand. That was Walt Whitman very long ago, 1892. If anyone wants to reflect on the verses, you could. Yeah. Susan, are you still here?
I want, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
wanted to also ask if someone can put in the video.
The the video of
Jean, yeah.
Jean's session, that is in the chat with two versions. Christine put in the version from Tiffy, and
Oh,
then there's the version from LYNN's channel with the description. I'll put it in again. Sure.
thank you. It doesn't show up in mine. Thank you.
Okay. Let me. Oh, maybe you were off somewhere. Good. So I'll put it here now.
Thank you.
I'll put a line first and then put it in. Now you could say, do you see it, Mary?
Yes, thank you.